Hello. There's
Hello.
the worst hello ever.
I almost said good morning because I know that's your favorite way for people to begin talks. My second favorite
Good
way for
morning.
people to begin talks is like, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. I'm like, nope, let's just cut it out. Like, say your own time zone at least.
So this is what's going to happen is we have two podcasters here, myself and Sadie, and yeah. So
So we're not going to stay organized at all.
not at all. Well, the last time I interviewed a podcaster, it's funny because I made the joke that we'll just be really good at listening to each other, but then nothing will be said. So we'll just be completely
Mhm.
silent the whole time. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah. So most people know me in the space of data science and AI, although when people ask me like what title I would give myself, I would say I'm an artist. And my husband laughs
Mm.
at me because he's like, yes, you can call yourself an artist. But I'm like, to me, it's the only thing that really describes what I do. I'm like, I create with data and AI. That's one tool, but I also create companies and I actually do
Mhm.
create physical art and music and whatnot. So at the end of the day, if we want to get it down to like the core root, I would say like I'm a creator, right? And I'm someone who loves to create. But the main medium I create with is data and AI. So I worked in the data science space. I started in 2014 and worked in healthcare and led a data science team there through an analytics transformation. And I went on to consulting and did AI strategy work. And during that time, I founded a company, or it's a nonprofit now called Women in Data. I grew very large. We have people in over 60 countries across the globe. And so I left my job and went in to run that full time. And then about 2 years ago, I missed working in technology. So I started
Mm.
another company, SSL Innovations, and was like, you know what? I want to get back to doing some of this work just to make sure like I still have it. And so we started with doing consulting projects. Right now, we're building some AI recommendation systems for healthcare companies, but it's kind of morphed into more. We are breaking out and doing a training and education branch in AI enablement. And then hoping this year we start my new think tanks. I want to build these like think
Jeez.
tanks in the forest. So it's always this continual unfolding. So when people ask like, who are you and what do you do? It's quite diverse. And so for me, I'm just like, I just create things and have a lot of fun and chat with people on the side.
Like us, I thought of a really bad dad jokes. You could give an SSL cert for your course.
I love it. I love it. I get asked that so many times. Actually, what I'm doing, I'm actually rebranding the company because I just started it on a whim, to be honest with you. I was like, I need another entity to not put everything into women in data. And
Mm.
so we're rebranding into the Human Machine Collaboration Institute.
Oh,
For the last like year, I've been trying to find a way to like merge my brain with the machine. And I actually bought an EEG set last year and I've been like
oh wow.
starting to collect data on myself and all of
You're
that.
such a
So,
nerd.
I mean, that's like long term down the road. Like right now, what the company does is just like, hey, we're going to teach you how to enable AI, but like futuristic thinking, I'm like, we need to find a way to even work more closely with
Are you
machine
gonna
learning.
you gonna sign up for a Neuralink transplant?
Um, I probably would. I mean, right now it's so much in the realm of just like you need a medical reason for it,
Mm.
but I think it's probably going to take some time. Just what's going to slow that progress down the most, in my opinion, is just regulation, right? Like
Yeah.
what I would love to see all of the inventions that are sitting right now in the hands of regulators, just waiting to be approved. Because I think it would probably shock us what's already been created, but is just delayed in terms of testing and regulation.
Might literally shock you. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, did you see I think it came out this fall, the research report from some researchers in Japan where they took your fMRI scans and were able to like re-encode and determine like what music you were thinking of in your head and was able to replay it like rather
Mm.
accurately. So I find that really
Interesting.
fascinating from a standpoint of like we don't know the majority of the thoughts in our head. Like maybe these devices could help us even uncover and bring more awareness to like what we're actually thinking every day.
Is that a good thing?
I don't know
Depends
what's
what
in
you're
your
trying to do, I
head,
think.
so you know.
I mean, now that you mentioned the songs, I mean, it's like nonstop like Snoop Dogg all day. I'm just kidding. So, it's like-
Exactly. We're like, what's the soundtrack of your life? You know?
just nothing but
Well,
Nickelback the whole time. It's great.
oh my God. Yes, I definitely went through my Nickelback phase, and I hope to
just
never
kidding.
see those days again.
Well, who else is on tour? Creed's on tour this year. So I think Carly and I were kind of joking. We're going to go to the Creed concert. So if you want to join us, that'd be dope. I'm joking, sort of. The invite's extended.
No, if it's at Red Rocks, Red Rocks is my favorite.
Red Rocks is
event.
good. Go see Creed at Red Rocks. That's hilarious.
I'd go to see Creed at Red Rocks if you and Carly were there.
Okay, well, stay tuned. Hold our White Claw. So,
I'll even bring the little the cozies or the koozies, right?
yeah,
That's the
koozies.
thing.
Yeah,
Oh, there we go. And we can get like our own branded ones, you know.
that's gonna be hilarious.
That'd be
So,
fun.
women in data. I actually have seen women in data around the world in my travels. What is women in data? What influenced you to start it?
Yeah, so at the core, Women in Data is a community, and what made me start it was just my personal need of community. So I live in Sacramento, California, which is like a great place to live, but also maybe the worst place to live because you're close enough to San Francisco, like an hour and a half away, where you can see all the cool things happening in tech, but like it's in an arm's reach away, right? And so back in like 2014, 2015, I was in my master's program for data science and was working in the field and really just felt like super lonely in the field. Typical nerd, I didn't have any friends, you know? And so I was like, I really want to talk to people about this. And I think this is going to change the world, right? Very tech optimistic person. And saw all these amazing events and things happening in San Francisco, but I'm like, I can't go there on a school night. Like that's way too far for me to come home in the morning and go to work. So it started with just a meetup group on actual Meetup. And when I kicked it off, I had 5 people register for the first event and was like, oh my God, like 5 people want to come. I'm so stoked. I never hosted an event before. And I realized that a lot of people say they want to do things, but don't actually show up to do things. And so by the time it was ready to start, no one was there. And I felt like a complete idiot. I'm like, oh my God, I'm reaching out to like create this amazing community and no one showed up. Right. So I called my husband at the time and I'm like, I'm an idiot. Like, I'm going to leave this restaurant. And again, mind you, I'm sitting at a restaurant with the sign that says Women in Data by myself. Right. And I'm like, this really should just say Woman in Data because there's
or
no
Woman
else.
in Restaurant, one of the two. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that would be very more accurate and descriptive. So he's like, just wait 15 minutes. So I had a book I brought with me. I swear I read that same page like over and over. You know, when you're like, act like you're doing something, but you're really not doing that thing. You're just trying to pass time.
I do that all the time at work. It's great. I'm kidding.
Day to day, right? Yeah. So then like almost 15 minutes in, a woman came busting through the door. She ended up bringing 2 other people.
Cool.
And that's how it started. And so I led the Sacramento chapter for 3 years and people started to move away and they were just like, I love this community. Is there a way for me to take it with me across the world? And so we started to open up chapters in other locations. Now we have about 60 chapters in members from over 50 countries. And then through that time, as you know, you get to talk to people and you learn more about what they want and what they need. And so that allowed us to expand into a whole online learning platform where we provide learning pathways in machine learning, data science, analytics, data engineering, have tons of different clubs and communities, do events, and then do like leadership training, mentorship, etc. So it's been a really incredible journey and really started from the bottom. And so like, not to quote any song again, but every day I'm like pretty much amazed that like people still love this and want to be a part of it. And it's really inspiring.
How many people are associated with Women in Data?
Our community is about 60,000 people. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's just, I tell people like all the time, honestly, if you just stick to something, you will end up seeing success in it because like so many good things happen just from consistency.
Oh yeah. Well, especially communities, I feel like that's an area where I've started communities too, and it feels like starting out's hard and it's frustrating, and it's cool once you get the traction, right? And then I haven't built something as big as what you built, which is really awesome to hear about. I want to dive more into that, but it can feel but that initial burst though, I think is really hard to overcome. And I think what people miss is the consistency part and showing up on a regular basis, because it does take a long time to build a community in the right way. And I think and a lot of people give up before that. So
Oh yeah, I would say like the majority of people give up. I mean, there were so many times like I wanted to give up and just like was like, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? I'll also have those days still, even like after you reach success. But yeah, I think what happens in the consistency part is when you also improve what you're doing too, right? Not only does it take time for people to like recognize you and know who you are, but like your whole process and methodology improves. And then I always tell people like we want people to show up in our community, but like if you're not consistent with how you're showing up for others, like they're not going to show up for you, right? So I think that's really the key is where like of course, like that first meeting, I wanted a ton of people to show up, like who wouldn't, right? But they didn't know me, like I'd never shown up for them. So like what incentive did they have to show up for me? Like that's what takes a lot of consistency.
And a lot of selflessness too. Because I think it's the other thing I see people kind of botching the community building is they're very transactional with what they do. And I think to build a community, it does require a big degree of just, I think, like paying it forward. It's kind of a cliche, but you definitely have to pay it forward when building a community and building that brand around it. Because again, like you say, nobody knows who you are, right? And I think all too often, I was talking about somebody about this today, where we're talking about the meetups that started here in Salt Lake many years ago, but it was like, I think an easy thing for people to be like, okay, so what's the ROI of each event? But you can't look at it that way. It's a compounding thing over time, you know?
No, you can't. I mean, so to give you perspective, like for the first 5 years of Women in Data, I did it for free as a volunteer, right? And the only reason then like I even got paid for it was because like I had to do it full time for like a period of time to actually like set up our infrastructure of what we needed it to be. So, you know, that's a lot of hours to really put in for like what you don't think is anything in return. And especially in those early like years, you don't get any of that positive reinforcement, right? Like people weren't asking me to come speak. I wasn't getting brand deals, like, you know, none of that, right? I was setting up chairs. That's what I was doing. I was like setting up chairs and like asking a sponsor if they would give us pizza. Like that was the work.
But that's how it starts, right? I think everyone has these grand ideas like, oh, I'm going to start this community and it's going to be amazing. And all these companies are going to want to sponsor us. And, you know, we'll be eating at, the Four Seasons and everyone will be staying there. And that's not how it starts. I mean, if you're lucky enough to have that, awesome, good for you. But I'd say the vast majority of the things, it is the grunt work day in and day. And that's what people don't see. They see your success now, like Women in Data is everywhere and you're very popular. But they didn't see you, basically stacking folding chairs and having to give away pizzas at the end of the night because there weren't enough people to show up to eat all the pizzas. So you're like, who wants to take like all the pizza home with them?
Thankfully, I love pizza. I'm like, I'm gonna have pizza.
You'll take it home with yourself then. Okay, perfect.
I will. Like my nickname as a kid was Fudgy, so like there's like still a fat kid inside of me.
Oh, nice! As I sit here eating my homemade ice cream right now, it's pretty awesome.
It looks good.
It's good. So it's protein ice cream. So all the athletes are into this. So you can mix milk and protein powder and freeze it, and you can make ice cream out of it, and it's healthy-ish.
That sounds amazing.
So there you go. You should do that.
I went and worked with John, who hosts the Super Data Science podcast.
Oh, John Crow. Nice.
Yeah, he's amazing. I love the picture we took together because in the background it was his weights that he was front squatting, and it looks like I'm like crushing it, right? And afterwards he made me a smoothie, and I still have the protein powder. Like, I'm totally into the protein powder that he uses. And
what kind?
Do you have Cold Stone creameries?
Yeah,
in Utah?
we have those.
I don't know. So Cold Stone Creamery has their like German chocolate cake, and it's that flavor. And I was like, this is the best protein powder ever. It makes me feel like I'm eating ice cream, but it would be even better if it was actual ice cream. So now I need to make some.
Yeah. So if you get the Ninja, it's called the Creamy, and it makes ice cream and other things like that. You can make sorbets, and it's pretty killer. And then you can look like, you're a total junk food addict, which I kind of am actually. But it's healthy-ish. So yeah, there you go.
That would be much better. I am a candy junkie, particularly like gummy candy. If like there's a new kind that comes out, like I have to try it, and I have a whole drawer in my house of just like gummy candy. So I should probably replace that with like protein ice cream.
Protein, I don't know if there's a gummy machine you can make, but it makes gummies. But yeah,
if someone makes protein gummies, all that we're making out here in California are, marijuana-induced gummies. So
yeah, and they're pretty good, but they've had a lot of years of experience making those. But yeah, protein gummies would be great. So anyone's listening, send Sadie some of those. So
please. They have the creatine gummies, but I think I need to like stay off the creatine these days. So
you're just gonna get a lot of water weight doing that. So
yeah, but I mean, I just feel like I'm crushing it in the gym when
creatine's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. Like when I first started taking creatine, I'm like, oh my goodness, like I feel so much stronger.
Well, I think it's the most studied supplement out there next to caffeine, and it does work. So
also hooked on that one too. So,
nice.
Like I try and stick to the tried and true supplements.
Crack. Just kidding. Just get you really jacked up. So.
For a little bit, might make you lose some weight too. But
how do you balance that though? I mean, we're Instagram friends, for example. I see your work, and it's like you're working a ton, but you also work out a lot. And one thing I've always wondered from fellow athlete / business people is that how do you maintain that balance between these two things?
So working out is my stress relief. Actually, I don't know if I actually work out to really work out. I think I work out to just like let my problems go, But for me, what I found, one of the things that I've done for 10 years is I track what I do in my day in a paper planner in half an hour.
What's it called?
So I created my own version of it now. It's called The Observer. But essentially, I have like 10 books of 10 years it's kind of I think of it like a captain's log of what I've done in half an hour increments. And what that made me realize is just like how inefficient I am with my time in ways that I can optimize it. And so for me, I'm really keen on like having one big task I focus on a day that's going to make me feel accomplished, and really like taking control of my time and saying no to a lot of things so that I can have like core focus time. Like if you look at my calendar, I typically only meet with people on like Tuesdays and Thursdays. And nice. Then like the rest is like core focus. And the other side of things is like, once you track your time for so long, I start to optimize myself in like how I work better, right? Like I work better, a big block of focus, and then taking a break and like working out midday, or, if I work out too late in the day, like I noticed I would go to bed later because I have so much energy after working out that then like that messed me up going to sleep early and getting up early, right? So once you start to observe yourself, hence the name of the planner, you realize there's all these little things that you can tweak. And so I accomplished like so much more than I ever thought was possible, but I also have like the most time I've ever had. And like, to me, I'm still like even boggled by it. Like, I used to work, like when I was in consulting, I worked like 12 hours a day and weekends. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
And I was unhealthy. I was burnt out. And now I just feel like so much more balanced. I get more done because I actually like take breaks and block my time.
It's an underrated skill too, right? I would say skill, but a practice of blocking out your time like you do. Like meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays is awesome, right? Because then it constrains that context switching to those days. But I think some people like to glorify the fact that there are lots of meetings, which I guess if that's what you're into, if that's your addiction and gives you a big dopamine rush, then more power to you. I hate meetings, so I do everything in my power to avoid them. I think they're inefficient for the most part. So I guess the only caveat is if you're going through like an email thread or like a chat thread and it's going like kind of in circles, and a quick phone call would probably do, but that's a quick phone call. It's not a meeting. But what kind of meetings do you take, and what kind of meetings do you tend to avoid?
So like sponsors come in with Women in Data. We used to have like an open calendar. Now I make people fill out a form to just be like, are you serious? Right? Or are you just here to be like,
Interesting.
talk through it? Right.
What a lot of
And
people do, are we giving like kind of time waster meetings, or what was happening with the first time?
oh yeah, like partnerships. Say they want to partner, but not really serious. Say they want to sponsor, but actually just want everything for free, right? Also don't care about like the mission or what we're trying to do. So changing it from like kind of an open form. I also got rid of Calendarly because I also found out that like with Calendarly, it's easy to be like, here's my link, book anytime, right? And I just felt that it like opened up too much of my schedule. So I always try and have people get really specific about like what we're going to talk about before a
Yeah.
session, right? So like with different forms that come through the website, most of the time I can send them off to somebody else on my team to be like, here's a link, right? Read more of this. If you're interested, then we'll schedule some time, right? So those types of things help quite a bit. I'm sure you get this a lot, which is people who reach out are like, will you mentor me? Will you support me? I never reply to those because I'm just like, I don't know you. And if I start
Yeah.
doing that, like it's going to be a waste of my time. The other side of things is I'm like, I built a whole organization, Women in Data, which has mentorship and education and everything
Right.
at scale. Like my time is best doing things at scale, right? Not individual one-off
Yeah,
type
for
of
sure.
sessions, right?
Yeah.
I can get a little too much of like no meetings because I don't like meetings either. So I am trying to like one day a week connect with someone in my Rolodex who I haven't connected with in a long time. And then in a matter of like you give what you give is then I always try and like connect two people in my network is the new thing I'm starting. So,
Well, that's cool.
okay, I want to reconnect with somebody who I haven't connected with for a while just to like maintain relationship. And then I want to connect two people in my network who I think are awesome and like would benefit from a conversation. So like Wednesday is when I do that. And last night, like I spent an hour making like email introductions, just reaching out to people, like saying hi, how's it going? You know, kind of rekindling some of those relationships.
That's cool. Why do you do that?
I listened to a talk about social capital, and I never heard the term social capital before, but essentially it's like who your network is, right? That is like, you probably heard the saying, like your network is your net worth.
It's like Zig Ziglar or
And
something.
I think so. Yeah. It
Yeah.
sounds like one of my old, like I can hear him
They
having
say it as
like
like
a,
twangy Southern accent, like
yeah,
your network is your
your
net
network.
worth or something. Yeah.
But it's catchy and you remember it. But there's the scientific term of it is social capital, right?
Yeah.
So who you're connected with and who you know has a value to it. And when I started to understand that further, and also I started to just see people in my own network who, nothing against them, they weren't the smartest people I know, but they were able to get really, really far in life. And I was kind of upset, right? I was like, what is going on? Like, you don't work that hard. You don't seem like you try that hard, but like you have all these just amazing connections. What I realized is they're really good at like building relationships, making friends, maintaining relationships. And so I started to just look at it differently and think that like there's a lot of value to this. I can learn a lot from people. But this is something that like I actually need to dedicate time to. Otherwise, like I won't do it, right? I'm just that type of person. For some people, it comes naturally, right? Like I need to connect these people. I need to reach out. For me, that doesn't come naturally. I have to set aside time to specifically do that.
And what has that been working out? What's the result of that?
I don't know if there's, I'm in the early stages of it. To me, I'm in the early stages of it. It reminds me of like when I first started Women in Data in the first 3 years.
Yeah.
So ask me again in 5 years, right?
I'm sure good will come of it though. You know, I mean, I'm in a similar situation where I have a lot of friends and connections, and maybe you're in the same boat, but do you feel like you're a connector for a lot of people? Like when people are like, hey, I do you know anyone who can X, Y, or Z, right? Can do this, or, is able to facilitate this. Like, it seems like you might be one of those people who has an idea of who that person might be.
Yeah, it's a really nice feeling to be at that place in my career where I'm like, people come to me and ask me for advice, and I'm like, no, who you should really talk to is this person, or who can really help you is this person, right? It's really nice to be at a place where it's like, A, I don't feel like I have to be all things to all people.
Right.
And B, like I know who is a good person to help you out.
That's a good spot to be in. And it helps, I think people remember that too, right? Because you never know how these new relationships, form and what happens after that. So it's an exciting spot to be in. So you run a lot of businesses. You're an entrepreneur. What else do you? I mean, you're an educator too, right? I mean, I think one of my friends, Colleen Foch, said she took your SQL course in Coursera one time, and so you do that too, I guess. What don't you do? What don't you do? Just kidding. Education, like let's walk through that. You also do that. So
I'm not very good at basketball, so like I'm not going to be playing anybody in Imagine.
You're not
basketball.
that tall. I think John Crumb could maybe play basketball, but you're not his height. So
No, yeah, I don't know what I'd do. I'd have to like kick him in the knees or something. I'd have to play dirty.
You'd punch him in the knees. You're about just kidding. Your height. So
we love you, John. Okay, we're not. He's like, what is wrong with these people?
Yeah, a bit deranged.
Yeah, so I love teaching. I always loved like I had my own piano studio in college. Like that was a way that I helped to fund my college. But I didn't anticipate getting into teaching data science classes. Again, this is just like the power of showing up. I got asked to be an advisor for UC Davis on some classes that they were looking at creating for Coursera. And I just was fascinated with like ed tech. And I thought like Coursera and that was the future back in 2016. Mm-hmm. And they ended up just liking what I had to say as an advisor. And I wasn't supposed to be the teacher of the class, but they said, hey, like, we really liked your input. And sometimes you were the only person who showed up in the meetings. So just attend the meetings and show up. Yeah. Like, do you want to teach a class? I didn't feel ready at the time to teach a class. I was like super nervous. I actually cried before I went into the recording studio because I was just like, I feel like a fraud, and then I listened to, I think like, some really cheesy song, right? To feel like, get me in the mindset. So when the class launched, and now over 600,000 people have taken the class. Wow. It's like, we won a bunch of awards for like top SQL MOOC class.
Congrats. That's cool.
It's really surprising and incredible. But I think what's probably the coolest thing is like the amount of people I've been able to connect with because of that class. Like one of who was a mentor in that class now works for me at SSL Innovation. and is a data scientist. We've done a bunch of different projects and stuff together. And so like just a number of connections and like the stories that you hear, and like Colleen is amazing, like a incredible athlete. And then to see her transition into analytics and have students like that, like I'm so inspired by what they're able to do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's cool to see. I mean, I mentor her as well. And it's cool to see her transition from being a world-class athlete in a few disciplines, actually, like 3 of them, I think, to being what is now, I think by all reckoning, going to be, an awesome, data analyst and practitioner. So I think, it's also a big function of like, when you find somebody who's like really smart and just knows how to win, like they can hopefully apply that to multiple disciplines. Oftentimes it doesn't work, but sometimes it does. And she's definitely a good example of that. So yeah, but she definitely called out your course as being like something that was super awesome, and she still remembers it. So it's really cool. And so what opportunities did the Coursera class bring to you? What doors did it open up?
So a main reason I taught the class was at that time, I didn't have any female data science teachers. And so part of the reason why I even said yes to it was I was like, okay, I think they're like, people need to see there's other types of people in this role. And I also knew that the Coursera platform was big.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was starting Women in Data, it'd be like a free way with no money to like get Women in Data's name out there.
Oh yeah.
And so to be honest, like a big reason that Women in Data has grown, particularly internationally, has been through that class, right? Individuals would come in, they'd take the class and they'd click on my bio, see that I started Women in Data, and then become a part of the organization. So just that in and of itself, like, again, back to that social capital and the people that you connect with is really incredible. Like I did not, while Coursera and UC Davis made millions for that class, I didn't think it would be successful and probably should have done a better job negotiating my contract. So I did not make millions off of that class, but what I have gained in return has been incredible connections, people that I've hired now, people who have started chapters in Women in Data. So, it goes both ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what you mean. It feels like it's a platform where if you're in it for the money, that's great. But it's also, I think, by all accounts, the world's biggest MOOC platform. Maybe apart from Udemy, I think that might be bigger. But and Coursera's kind of got a bit of a different cachet to it. So, because it's harder to be an instructor for Coursera because you have to be in through one of the schools like UC Davis or one of the Ivy Leagues or deep learning AI, right? So that's like just not everybody gets in and does that. So that's really cool. You got that experience, and then you're making other courses still. So that seems like you got decent at doing that.
Yeah, I took a break, and then LinkedIn I was just busy with other things, and nothing really strike my passion.
Mm.
And so then LinkedIn reached out to me last year and asked me to teach an AI fundamentals course for data professionals. And so I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. And I was kind of nervous. I was like, man, I didn't expect my first course to be a success. Like, am I a one-hit wonder, right?
Yeah,
You're like that fear of like, did I have that one song that everybody loved and no one remembers afterwards? And so part of it too was like just even to rebuild some of my own confidence of like, oh yeah, I can still teach and I enjoy teaching and this is really fun. And so I did that. I'm talking with them about doing 2 more classes and also talking with UC Davis about doing another class now on Coursera again.
Sick.
So yeah, cool. We'll see. Again, there's a lot of different opportunity in the space. I would love to learn what people feel is missing in terms of education today. But
I have some ideas, but
tell me more.
It's
really hard to not. I'll say this as a podcaster: it's really hard to not interview you and ask you questions because I'm like,
that's how it rolls, though. That's how it rolls. Yeah. Well, I think if you're talking about traditional education, for example, I think at a university level, especially when you're discussing things that are I think there's kind of 2 threads to this. If you're teaching pretty classical stuff like calculus, kind of well trodden stuff like chemistry, whatever. That's been taught. Music, right? I mean, to a large extent, like the fundamentals are there. Data is an interesting thing where I feel like the fundamentals are still gelling.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're still trying to figure out what those are. To some extent, they're there. The underlying basics, I think the tactical stuff, for example, like statistics, like that to me is one of the fundamentals of being proficient in data is having good statistical literacy and having good data literacy. And these are kind of two peas in a pod, in my opinion. Stats has been around for a long time. That's but when you're talking about fields like data science and data engineering and now AI, for example, whatever that means, whatever day and mood you happen to be in when you're talking about it, I think these are the areas that they're hard to teach because the target is moving so quickly. So what do you distill those fundamental principles down to? Right. Like I was talking to my friends the other like last week, who was it, Matt Sharp and Chris Brousseau, they just finishing up their book on large language models in production.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing was, okay, so like they're trying to distill large language models down to a set of quote fundamental principles, but every time they write a chapter, they have to go back and revise about 3 other chapters because that changed. Right. So it's difficult. I just think it's difficult to teach these things. And so how does that work in a university setting? And something that could be taught on, say, Coursera, for example. Maybe I think like what Andrew Ng's doing with deep learning AI is like, I think one way to do it, where he's releasing a lot of courses really quickly now. Right. I mean, these mini courses, and I think these are a bit more digestible. They're maybe a week or 3-week long courses. And that's, that to get you up to speed on like an approach that's relevant for today, like literally today, because it could change tomorrow. So that's just it. But it feels like the university experience is really behind. I was talking to some people yesterday about it, and it definitely feels like for a lot of reasons, like professors with tenure have no incentive really to update their courses, because like why do that when you can just kind of coast? So yeah, there's a lot of factors at play where I'd say it's how do you effectively teach somebody in a way that's they're not going to have to keep revisiting the topic every 5 minutes. I don't know. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, universities have their own issue, and I only know this because for UC Davis, I designed a machine learning certificate. And so this was unlike Coursera, where you complete the class and Coursera gives you a certificate. Like this had to go through academic review boards.
Yeah.
I wrote it all out for them, and it took them 2 years to go through the academic review board. 2 years for machine learning. I'm like, throw it away. Like what I wrote 2 years ago, like, yeah, there's principles that are as true, but like a lot, it needs a lot of refresh, right?
Wow.
And if you refresh it, then you also have to go through that review cycle again. So the main problem with academia is just like the review boards take too long. Now, there is a positive with academia, which is, what are people going to rate better, a class in Coursera or, an academic institution that's certified and approved, right? Like, I think we still have a lot of respect for our academic institutions and know like there's a certain level and standard and, hopefully no cheating involved for you to be able to.
Definitely not on ChatGPT. Definitely not that.
Yeah.
So,
I think academia needs a refresh for sure in terms of making that process a lot faster, but more importantly, at the same time, hold that level of trust too.
Yeah.
In terms of like fundamentals, I think we have to go a little bit more to teaching people how to think. And I also think just like the way that we work is going to change, particularly with like AI assistants and like ChatGPT. Instead of doing all the work ourselves, we in turn are going to be like the teachers. We're going to be grading the work, right? So you may have an output, and instead of you creating that output, writing your paper from scratch, like you need to go through that and really understand and be able to grade it to see is this a sound argument? Is it accurate? Is it getting to the point of what I really want to do? That flips all of academia and how we've been teaching on its head, right? Like The worst way to teach is like learning rote memory and preparing for
Yeah.
exams. Unfortunately, that's still very popular. Like the next way that people teach is like creating something and, coming up with it on your own and like designing a system, writing an essay, etc. But like, I don't see anybody who's teaching like, how do you grade work and how do you critically think to know if it's like a sound argument or a proper way of doing things. And I think that may be a new method we may have to explore as we start to integrate AI more into our workflows.
Gosh, I hope so. It's like critical thinking. That's the only boundary I would say between it's sort of this society where everything's a hall of mirrors and people versus people coming to a consensus on something as possible as it is in today's very polarized universe. That's a different discussion. But yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on with that. Where if you don't have that ability to reason, I think there might be something to be said for like stuff like ChatGPT offering that ability to teach you critical thinking skills. You have a pretty good BS detector, but I guess you also need like a point of reference to counterbalance whatever you're reading on there or whatever it's generating. And so I guess the big question is, how would you ever know that it's right or wrong if you didn't know how to figure that out, or if you don't have the material to validate it against? And so I don't know. We're going to see.
Yeah, it reminds me of like the early days of models of like when I created some of my like first, simple classification models, and like I throw data in and get an output and be like, oh my God, I created a model. And then I realized like it was all trash, right? Like I had bad data going in. I didn't know what my results said. How we use like ChatGPT is kind of the same. Like anybody can go in and create like a prompt, the simplest or more complex, and it will give you something. It will give you an output.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether that is right, we don't have a confidence interval score on it. That's left to the eye of the beholder, right? Of whoever is the one who asks the question. And I noticed this because on my team, like we kind of have a rule that like any AI tool you want, you can have and try out. And more importantly, like the more work that we automate of ourselves, we take more time off, right? So like everybody's closed through Christmas and New Year's, those kind of things. I have team members who use ChatGPT a lot, and I can still tell when they know what they're talking about and don't know what they're talking about, right?
How can you tell?
So I'm really into like a clarity of thought, right? Right now it's so easy to produce content. What I'm attracted to is individuals who can clearly articulate their point. And what you notice with outputs with ChatGPT, if you don't give it really good prompts or know how to refine it better and shape it into a clarity thought, is it will start to run in circles. And it kind of sounds like you're talking to a consultant, right? Which is like, hey, here's a bunch of big words. Here's all the buzzwords, but I'm not really saying anything, right? Like, what is your point? And for me, I can always tell. Or if a post starts with, I'm thrilled to share, then I know automatically.
Oh, I'm going to troll you with that one. I'm thrilled to share. Noted.
I will know right away. Which is kind of a bummer, because now I feel like I can't ever say I'm thrilled to share something because it's like the clearest sign.
Oh, that's funny. You're writing a book too. Walk me through this. So you're writing a book. What's it about?
Yeah, so the book is called Minds and Machines. It's about how
Minds and Machines. Interesting.
Yes. Okay. I can't believe they let me get away with this title. I'm really hoping they let me get away with like a picture of half of my face and then the other half of it like being a robot. Like I said, I'm obsessed with like being combined with a robot. We'll see. My publisher is Pearson. They've been awesome so far, but they're a little bit more traditional. So I'm going to see how far we can push it with them. But yeah, so essentially it's It's for knowledge workers. So anybody who works at a desk and understanding how to integrate AI assistants into your work stream and workflows. And so I take them through a light history of computing and how we got to where we are today, what to know when using these tools, like where are their pitfalls, how can they be helpful, what are some of the ethics behind it, but most importantly, like how do we start to rethink the way we do work? Again, back to like that idea I was sharing, that we're going to need to learn how to be good graders of the output of these tools. And so the way I kind of look at it is, before, an organization was structured like an orchestra, where me as an individual contributor, like I may play the violin or the trombone, and that's my part. And then I'm on a team with the other trombonists, right? And that's like our, software engineering team. But how I see it in the future, instead of having each individual play a part in the orchestra, we all have the ability to become like orchestrators, and AI can do those individual roles that we once had to do ourselves. And so that changes the perspective on a lot of things, because for a lot of individuals, I see individuals struggling with knowing, like, how do I actually create? How do I tell something else what to do? Particularly if you've always been an individual contributor, right?
Yeah.
If you're used to managing people and telling people what to do, then I think it's a little bit easier. But I see it more as individual contributors and knowledge work will span more multiple roles than they had in the past, and be more of that orchestrator versus that individual musician. So that's the concept behind the book. And then it'll kind of go into the technical aspects of what that looks like and how to kind of update your thinking and way of working.
That's really cool. And the reason I asked about that is when we were talking about large language models just a second ago, writing a book, I feel, has changed since ChatGPT came out. So how are you incorporating?
Everybody prior should be like, I wrote this book prior to ChatGPT. I feel like they should get a stamp, right?
Yay. I did.
Yeah.
So well, you made your Coursera course before ChatGPT too, so I think that also counts. But I mean, walk me through this. I mean, you're writing a book on minds and machines, and you're writing a book about using large language models to improve your work and life. How are you using large language models to write your book? Or are you? I guess that's another question. I should ask that.
Oh yeah. I have a little bit of dyslexia, and so I definitely needed to like edit it, like grammatically edit it, of like, hey, make sure what I'm saying is in the right order of things. So that helps a lot. But two ways. One, I always will start my own outline. So for me, like, I don't even use a computer to do that. The best way to do that for me is like a blank piece of paper.
Agreed.
And like, I still do that for everything, like talks, no matter what. Like, I have to know what I'm saying. So I started the outline of the book, got that approved. Now I'm going in and like outlining the chapters. And then I use the GPT plugin Consensus to be able to find different research and different studies. Probably my favorite GPT is Consensus, because I'm like, I want to know how social media has affected the brain. Like, that's a portion in the book of like how we're already morphing our brain based on past creations and things. It'll provide me the full list of things. I'll read it. I'll take out what parts from the research I want to use in that chapter. I'll add it to my outline. Then I will write a draft of it. I'll give it to ChatGPT. I'll say, hey, I want you to provide me feedback. Where do you think it's strong? Where do you think it's weak? If I like some of the feedback, I'll say, great, incorporate that, update that. And then once I have it all put together, I'll be like, now can you grammatically edit this and make sure that it's easy to understand? And the other side of things that I'm doing with it is I'm also giving it a Gini index.
Oh,
which is
interesting.
essentially, yeah, if you're not familiar with the Gini Index, it's about like at what reading level people read at. And the majority of people actually only read at like an 8th grade reading level. So I also will have it go through it and update the reading level to make sure like I don't get too technical or too easy to read, and make sure it's a good reading level.
Can something be too easy to read though?
I don't think anything could be too easy to read, but I think it may miss some of the details necessary. There's a really great series on YouTube where they take different concepts like blockchain, AI, cybersecurity, neuroscience, and they go through, explain it to a kindergartner, a middle school student, a high school student, a college student, etc. And so you kind of go up like this tier of levels. And what I found in watching those series of videos was that the communication style doesn't necessarily get harder to understand. It just has more detail.
Yeah.
And so I think that you can have it in a way where you're not speaking in Old English per se.
Well, that's how I plan to write my next book. So lots of ye's.
Have you started writing your new book?
Yeah. I'm about I think this month I'll be done with the first 3 chapters. I had the first chapter done, then I nuked it and started over. Actually, wanted to change it. So I'm releasing sections of it on Substack already. In fact, one might be up tonight.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I'm kind of taking a different approach. Not using a publisher this time. Gonna actually use my new publishing company. It's gonna be announced soon. So because I feel like, back to the notion of education's changing. I feel like book publishing and content's also changing quite quickly. I mean, what's the notion of what does a book really mean in the year 2024 and beyond? I think that's a question I've been grappling with. On one hand, the literal answer is a book doesn't change because it's just a bunch of words on a page, and why don't you stop pontificating and overthinking it and just go with that one? But on the other hand, it's I think the nature of writing is changing, right? I mean, theoretically, you could just have a robot write everything for you. As you point out, critical thinking is one of these things where I feel like that could possibly be in decline, or is attention spans are certainly changing. I think the attention span now is about 45 seconds. So that's pretty awesome.
So people already stopped listening to us because,
Well, they stopped that a long time ago. Yeah, but it's a book is an interesting one, right? I'm kind of like, okay, so what? And the other part of this is when you're writing a book, the important thing to do is build the audience around the idea of your book, right? And what you're trying to convey. And that's something where I feel like the book writing process, you could facilitate that better. Like, why not just do things more in public and bring an audience and build the audience around the idea? And you'll have validation of whether or not what you're writing is any good anyway, versus like the traditional approach is what, it's very black box. Like, author goes and hides in a house for a long time or whatever, castle or cardboard box, wherever they live, writes the book, and then it's out. And then who knows what happens? Maybe people love it. Maybe people don't. Your editor is there to help you along the way, but they're not a subject matter in this stuff. They know how to make a book. But how many books are published every year? How many are successful, right? So it's like the ones that are successful are the ones that have built the audience around the idea and have built that tribe, right? So that's where I've been rethinking a lot of how I'd want to approach a book going forward. Because a publisher is great, except like it seems like the author does all the work and the publisher takes all the money. So sounds like a few other industries out there. So yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of rethinking the whole thing, and I decided to do it this way. But the book's being written right now. So to answer your
And are you
question.
using ChatGPT for portions of the book?
I use it as a conversational agent, I think, to help me think through ideas. I don't use it to help me write it. My writing style is such ChatGPT I think it would not work really well with what I'm trying to do. But I certainly use it as a conversational agent, like walk me through these ideas. I have some ideas. Mm-hmm. Walk me through any holes you see in my reasoning. Like, it's really good at that, actually.
Yeah.
And it's a really good conversational agent, especially when you're all your friends are off of their day jobs, and you can't talk to anybody about it, then ChatGPT is a good, or Bard, either of them are, I think, pretty good at being a conversational agent. That's how I use it. Yeah, but I don't use it for the writing process. I think because it ultimately, as a writer, it's up to you to have the critical thinking of of coming up with the ideas that are really going to make your book your book.
Mhm.
Right. And so that's again where the critical thinking is. And I was talking to somebody at lunch today about this, but it feels like with writing, there's no other substitute that's better than writing in terms of refining your thinking around something. So that's why I do it.
Yeah, that was a big motivation for me for writing a book, was from people I talked to, they're just said, like, even if you just do it for yourself, which is to refine your thinking and get really clear in how you think, like, you're going to get a ton of benefit from it. So while you hope that like your book does well and you build this audience and community, I think even just like the benefits of like refining your own critical thinking is important around that.
Well, it's important. You're a thought leader in this space, right? And so thought leader means you have interesting thoughts, or thoughts that will help move the industry forward. If you're just relying on a robot to as you're kind of offloading your thinking to that, I think you're cutting yourself short. Right.
I prefer the term thought contributor.
I like that.
I try and stay away from like expert or leader.
Yeah, that's true.
Like
yeah.
I sometimes contribute thoughts that people find helpful, is the way I like to think of it.
But it's an interesting one, because I mean you're writing about something I think is really timely and prescient as well, where minds and machines, it's a big topic, and we're entering the age. It used to be humans and machines, but machines in the sense of things that would do replace muscle power. But now, for the first time, I think you really actually have the ability to have machines do a lot of the mental work that people are doing too. So
yeah, I hope that it actually frees up more of our time to be able to create and do things that are of interest to us. I think if you look at like our working patterns, the whole idea of like a 5-day work week and 40 hours a week, if that's still what you're stuck into, like really came from like the assembly line in cars and like 100 years ago. And how we work has changed so much, but like we haven't updated our systems for working either. And so one of the things that I found just with like tracking my own time is, if I do 4 hours of really hardcore focus work, I can't do another just 4 hours on top of that. Like it doesn't work. Right. And so I could probably do 8 hours on an assembly line. Like I wouldn't enjoy it. Right. But like more mindless kind of tasks you can do for a little bit longer. Like my body can go on, I think, like so much longer than my mind can. And so I think we also need to like start rethinking some things in terms of like all of this knowledge work. Is it reasonable to work 8 hours a day? I don't think most people really are. So can we just admit to that and change some of these systems, right? And then also, what do we offload to machines and what do we keep ourselves, right? As the AI increases in its capability and knowledge, like what are the tasks that we say, yes, you do this, but I will always be in the loop and always be there to review it. And if I'm a reviewer, is that take more cognitive ability than to actually create it in the first place? Like for me, like reviewing my employees' work is much harder than if I were to just like sit down, create an outline, draft up exactly what I wanted to say. I personally notice it takes a lot more cognition, like providing good, high quality feedback.
Yeah, I thought that's really interesting. Like, kind of what are those boundaries? So, yeah, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, these are some of the things I'm researching. I studied neuroscience for a little while, and so I really enjoy reading neuroscience papers. And hence part of the reason for writing the book was like, I just want to get up to date on like what's happening in the space. And there's a lot of correlations between the two fields. And so Part is just
Cool.
my own learning of what's the latest research on the best way to think and to work and to combine that with a machine.
That's
It should be
awesome.
fun.
When's it going to be out?
Sometime this fall. I don't know the exact date
Okay.
yet, but
It's always hard to say. So
fall 2024.
fall 2024. Well, that we'll get you on our live show. We can talk about it then. So once it's out, yeah, do a giveaway or something. Congrats. That's really exciting. Is this your first book?
It is my first book, yes.
Wow, congrats. Well, you'll grow a lot in this process. And I think you'll hit about the 75% mark when you're about done, and you're gonna get kind of like a just heads up. You might get a senioritis moment. We were kind of just like, oh man, we're almost done, but that's when the hardest part is.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, do you write your book sequentially, like starting with chapter 1? Because I feel like if I get senioritis, then like the last 2 chapters are just gonna be trash, right? Like I experienced this with playing music. I'd have to memorize like these massive pieces of like 30 pages, right?
Shit.
As a piano performance major. And so I'd start at the beginning, and then your mind just kind of fades and you're just like, making up the chord progressions, right?
So what I do is I actually, as I say, I always have an outline. I think the table of contents is what's going to keep you honest. So that outline, I'll write out a draft of chapter 1, but knowing that that's actually chapter 1 is always the hardest chapter for someone to write, because that's the chapter that you're going to get the reader hooked on. So like write a draft and come back to it last and finish that, right? Because your assumptions in your first chapter may actually change depending on how you've written your other chapters. And some editors just say don't, and writers just say don't even bother with chapter 1. Start with chapter 2 and go from there. But then the later chapters is an interesting one. So I always have, so I write mine in Google Docs, but I have the docs for each chapter there. So I'll just go and as ideas come, I'll just write things in that chapter, knowing that I'm going to come back to it when I get to it. But those stubs are there, paragraphs, whatever, links, right? And so that's kind of how I write, and just start filling it in as you get to it. And then ultimately, you're good at blocking time out. So what I also do is like each day is dedicated to a certain section in a book, and then the next day is dedicated to another. Hopefully, you can get it all done. If you can't, then that work starts building on itself, and then you have to go back and refigure out how your schedule is. But that's roughly how I write. But I do write somewhat sequentially, but knowing that, especially with your first chapter, that's your most important one, and you're going to have to go back and redo it a lot. So it's hard.
Yeah,
that's what I do.
I wrote the first chapter, but I'm like, okay, it's down, but it's kind of like your executive summary or your abstract. Like you really can't write that until the whole thing's done. So,
well, the other thing I do is I write the conclusion first.
Start from the end in mind. I like that.
Like a Stephen Covey kind of thing. Yeah. So 7 Habits of Horrible Writers.
Exactly.
But the conclusion, though, or at least a summary of kind of what you want to talk about, like that reflects sort of the, if you can arrive at the conclusion and work backwards from there, and hope, because the conclusion is what you want the reader to take away from reading that section, right? And so it's kind of one thing I've gotten into the habit of doing. No pun intended, I guess. But yes, but everyone's got their own way. I mean, you ask a writer, 10 different writers how they do stuff, and you get about 12 different answers. So that's how it is.
The thing I'm most surprised is how many like links and resources and random notes I have. Like I'm like, I read something. I'm like, that would be an interesting tidbit to include, or like, I mean, the list just keeps building. That's like the one thing I'm like, I got to get better at organizing all of this because.
Yeah,
right
I put everything in Notion, like in a Kanban. So each article or thing is actually its own ticket.
That's smart.
Then you can assign it to a chapter. Not that you'll remember to. Not that I'll remember to do that, but it's like the intent's there. But at least you have a record of like kind of what you read.
Yeah.
So if you need to go back, because I know what you mean. Notes can pile up like crazy. Links can pile up, and so it's so much fun. Ugh.
Like this is a bunch of good stuff. Like my book is just a list of links. Like,
That could just be your
there's things
book.
you can read. Yeah, exactly.
It's basically like Google, like search page.
Exactly. And then I'm like, here, give it to ChatGPT and it'll summarize it for you. And each one of you can create your own adventure and write your own book with the links of research that I've done for you.
You're joking, but that might actually be a book someday. So
Honestly, I'm like, why am I even writing a book? I should just switch to that.
that's hilarious. Well, Sadie, it's been good chatting with you. Good luck on the book. Hope it works out really well. So
Thank you. I appreciate
yeah,
to just write. So
for sure. For people who want to learn more about you and what you're up to, how can they do that?
I have a pretty unique name, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Twitter. It's just Sadie St. Lawrence. And
Your Instagram's a lot of fun, by the way. So
thanks. I just make one rule. I hate so I know we're ending, but can I just say I hate people who tell you need to stick to content pillars of like, these are my subjects and I talk about, and I'm like, please just be a whole human being. Like, I don't want to hear just about data engineering. Right? Like,
no.
I
I mean,
want to hear about your
half the
recent
stuff
life.
is like you just trying on cool clothes and taking pictures of them. It's like, yeah, you have a fun day, or painting, or going out running with your dog or something. So it's fun. So, because you get to know the other side of the person, right? You're not just like some dweeb who's talking about data stuff all day. I mean, that's boring. So,
oh my God, data's so boring. The only thing that's interesting is people, in my opinion.
yeah. I mean, mine was, I think I don't post a lot of pictures. I post a lot of stories. I think one of them was today. I mean, my stuff's just totally unhinged. Yeah. First Neuralink implant recipient successfully performs depraved sexual acts on Elon Musk. Like, I'll just have that on there. It's an Onion article, by the way.
I followed Joe for dark humor and also where is he at in the world today?
Thank you. Yes, that's also what I post a lot. Is just the random where's Waldo kind of stuff. But no, your Instagram's a lot of fun. And I think that's something I hope more people will do, is just post stuff that's themselves. I think, as you pointed, the content pillars is something I think people take a bit too seriously, and it's cool, but it's also kind of boring. Like, I want to see the personality behind people, not just the curated content and all that fun stuff. So show the unhinged parts of your life. That's great. So, or the other parts. Maybe you're not unhinged, but anyway.
Yeah, but we're not too unhinged. But
no, you seem pretty sane. So
from another sane person, yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a good day. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. That's, yeah.